We are going to pick up again at the bottom of Daf Yud Amud Beis, bottom of 10b. The last line on the page, there's a little colon over there. We're starting with Kamatz v'ala biyodo tzrar or gargush hamelach or kar levona pasal. The previous Mishnah wrote that if somebody does the kmitza, inside the kmitza, he finds in his hand either a little pebble or a little bit of salt, a little clump of salt, or a little bit of levona of the frankincense inside that kmitza, it would be puzzle. That little fistful that he'll take out will be puzzle. It has one of the three there. So Gemara asks the simple question: Kalhani Lamali, why do you need to list all these three? What is the difference between a pebble, or a grain of salt, or a little clump of the levona of the frankincense? Why don't you just say one of them, and we'll figure it all out? Gemara says, Tzricha, we need to have the Ditana Tzrar. If we only wrote the halach about a pebble, I would say, well, okay, that's understood. Of course, if you have a pebble inside your kmitza, that doesn't belong there. So Mishum la basakravehi doesn't belong here at all. So that's why it ruins everything. Aval melach basakrava, even though melach is not part of the original ingredients of the mincha, but at the end of the day, all karbanos have to have salt on them. So there's nothing really wrong with there being salt inside this kometz, therefore it'd be fine. The fact that it's inside the kmitza is fine. So I would say emet skasher. So no, the Mishnah has to point out that no, there cannot be a clump of salt inside the kmitza. The salt comes afterwards, after he does the kmitza from the karban mincha. Afterwards he'll put salt on and then put it on the mizbeach, but it should not be there before he does the kmitza. V'itana melech, if you would tell me the halacha about melech and say, you know what, all right, melech doesn't belong there at this point in time, therefore it ruins the kmitza. That's because lo ikva b'hadei mincha meikara doesn't belong in the mincha at the beginning process. It only belongs there, as we said, after you do the kmitza. You put salt on top of the kmitza and you put it on top of the mizbeach. However, levona the ikva, I'm skipping the parentheses. Levona the ikva b'hadei mincha meikara. Levona, this frankincense belongs there. It's part of the mincha from the beginning of it. Ema tiskasha, I would say maybe it would be fine that even if there's levona inside that little handful. So the Mishnah has to point out that no, even if there's levona in there, it will be possible. So it's important just to see Rashi for a minute. Excellent question. Yeah, I wasn't going to point that out. Now that you asked it, Rashi asked the question. We'll get to it soon. Okay. Now, if you look at the first Rashi on the page, Rashi asks a simple question. The first Rashi, Okarat Levon Apostle, Mipnesha Kometz Chaser Kedimakum Akarat. Rashi explains the reason why any one of these things would ruin the kometz is because the fact of the matter is you need this measurement of a kometz of the karban mincha in there. Now, if you're going to have a pebble there, or if you have salt there, or if you'll have a levona there, that obviously means you don't have the full amount of the kometz that you need. Rashi just asked a simple question. V'im Tomar, Ketzad kometz, v'lo levona al mincha hi dichsiva kol halavona shal mincha. Rashi just asked me a simple question. How do you make a mincha? You have the flour, then you put the levona on top of it. And then when you'll do your kmitza, you're just obviously going to have some of that frankincense inside there. It's just the order of the process of the karban mincha. So Rashi says, no, even though you put the kometz on, teshuva l'davar, kishekometz, when he does this kmitza, when he pulls out this kmitza from his karban mincha, misalei kalavona kulu l'tzad echad, v'kometz asolos miyam tzakeli. He says, you're right, you have to pour the levona on top of the flour. But when it comes time for the kmitza, move it over. Put your hand in there, move over the levona, and then take a pure kometz of just flour. Now, in terms of Moshe's question, Rashi asks in the next Rashi, V'i kasha, the little period in the middle of the Rashi, about it's 5 lines into the skinnier lines of Rashi. V'i kasha v'lashmina levona v'kol shekei tzrar u'melach. Why do you have to go in this order? First say a pebble, and then say salt, and then say levona. Just say levona. And if we'll find out that even levona ruins the kometz, so of course a pebble would ruin it. So Rashi says, Tritz itana levona bereisha hachinami. You're right. we would have figured it out. We don't need to really list all of them. He says, you're right. Really, what inspired this was what happened if he found a tzrar. So we built up the case to say not only a pebble, but even salt and levona. But you're right. If the Mishnah would have wanted to save space, it could have just written levona, and you're right, we would have figured it out. Just wanted to go from the more of the worst case to the better case and show you that even in the better cases, it's not going to work. But you're right. The Gemara probably wouldn't have accepted this terror. It's a Mishnah. If it was a pasuk, it would be that much more difficult to swallow. But if it's a Mishnah, you can understand that the way that the Mishnayos were taught, they wanted to go from an easier case to a more harsh case. Gemara continues. A komotz which has less than it's supposed to have, or more than it's supposed to have, is possible. So my area nishum chaser v'yeser. Mishnah explains that the reason why it would be possible is because it has too much or too little. Why do we have to say because it has too much or too little? And that's why if you have something else inside the komotz, it's going to be possible. Typically, mishum chatzitza. Why don't we say a simple thing? There is a separation over here inside the karba mincha. Now, there's two understandings of what this means. Either it means that when he's going to do the komotz with his fingers, all avodah needs to be done with the kohen's actual body. Now, if there's going to be a pebble which separates between his body and the karba mincha, so he has a chatzitza between his hand and the karba mincha. That's one way of understanding. Another way of understanding it is that the komotz needs to be one full body of komotz. But if you're going to have a foreign substance in the middle of the komotz, then the komotz itself is divided. So why don't we just say the reason why it's possible if it has a foreign object in there is because there's a chatzitza, there's a separation there. Because what we're talking about here is where this pebble or the levona or the melech was on the side. And we're going to see what that means because we're going to explain momentarily exactly how the kmitza was done. But basically, just to jump the gun a little bit, the way the kohen does the kmitza is in a sideways motion. He puts his hand in a sideways motion, then he closes his fingers where his thumb's on the top and his pinky is on the bottom. So if he has that little pebble and the side by the top of his finger of his etzba, then it won't be separating between his hand and the komotz. As well, it won't be separating between the actual komotz because the komotz is attached on the other side. So therefore, we couldn't have said that there was a problem of a chatzitza when he did the kmitza that way, and we needed to include that case to explain that even that case would be problematic. And the only explanation for that is that the komotz is chaser; it's missing part of what it needs to have. Amar le Abaye l'Rava. Abaye said to Rava, "Keitzad komtzi." So he asked Rava, how do we do this kmitza? Amar le the kamti inchi. You do it like people grab things. It's very simple. You're supposed to grab a part of the mincha, grab it. So it seems like from here what he's saying, take all your fingers and grab a whole fistful. Eisvei. So Gemara asks the question, hold on a second. There's a brayso that says, Zu zeres, we're identifying the name of all the fingers. And Zu zeres, the pinky is called the zeres. Why is it called the zeres? Because when the parsha talks about how to make the big day kahuna, it says that the choshen has to be a zeres in size. And since when zeres means the space between the pinky and the thumb, so since that measurement starts from the pinky gets its name zeres. But it continues. Zu kmitza, the next finger next to the pinky, that's called the kmitza. Why? Because that's where kmitza starts from. So hold on a second. We see already that the kmitza is not done with all the fingers. As a matter of fact, the reason why this finger was given the name kmitza is because that is the finger that's used for the kmitza, not the pinky. More continues. Zu amma, this is the long finger. Zu, again, that's because it's used to measure amma. Zu etzba, the other finger is called an etzba because the index finger because it's used as an etzba. We learned yesterday the kohen dips his etzba into his palm and takes oil out, puts it on the mitzvah. And zu godel, and this is the godel, the thumb is considered the godel. So what we see clearly that the second finger, I mean the finger close to the pinky, is called a kmitza for the very reason that that's where you measure a kmitza from. So again, skip the parentheses. The Gemara says, El lahashvos. So the Gemara says, you're right. You use all the fingers, but that last finger, the pinky, is used to smooth it out. We're going to see how that works. So hechi avid. How does he do this? Amar Zutra, Bar Tuvya, Amar Rav Chofa, Shalosh etzba'osav ad shmagia al pas yodo v'kometz. He folds over the three fingers until it reaches his palm, and v'kometz, and he pulls out a kometz. Tani nami hachi. We learned a similar brayso that says malo kamtzo. He uses a full kometz. Yachol mevurat. I would think it should be overflowing. Tamalomer bikumtzo. It should be an exact kometz. Ibikumtzo. If it would say in the pasuk bikumtzo, without saying milo kamtzo, then yachab rosh etzba'osav. I would say he could simply take the tips of his finger and pull out. Just grab a little pinch of the flour, and that would be enough. Tamalomer milo kamtzo. It needs to be a full grasp of three fingers. Okay, Tzad, how does that work? Chofa shalosh etzba'osav al pas yado. He folds over the three fingers on the palm of his hand, the kometz, and he pulls out he grasps a kometz worth of the mincha. B'machvas v'marcheshes, by carbon minchas machvas, minchas marcheshes, which were menachos that were baked. One was in more of like a frying pan type of a vessel, another or pan. The other one was built in like more of like a deeper pot, but those were baked before he did the kometz. So what they would do is, after they would bake it, they would fold it over against itself a bunch of times until you had a bunch of small pieces, and then he would do the kometz from those pieces. So in those cases, b'machvas v'marcheshes mochik b'godlo milmaylo ubetzbo ketana milmata, he would use his thumb on the top to smooth out what was there, and his pinky on the bottom to smooth out what was flowing out. This is the most difficult avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, because Rashi has two different explanations. One of them is because we can understand why with the thumb it's not so difficult because it's a strong finger, but to use the pinky to go ahead and flatten out what was coming out of the bottom, that was a little bit difficult, especially since we're talking about a baked item already. So he has to break off the pieces that were sticking out on the bottom and make it smooth. So that was difficult. And Rashi actually explains here the first very wide line at the end of the line. It's got to be perfect. And he wasn't using his other hand to smooth it out. He had to use his pinky to smooth out what was coming out, what was overflowing from his kmitza. That was very difficult to make sure, and it was an exact measurement, and therefore it was difficult. The Gemara right away asks the question, like, this is it. This is the most difficult. Sometimes we identify a few things as being the most difficult thing in life. And the Gemara says here we are finding a trend of the Gemara listing a few things as considering it the most difficult thing. If you remember back in Zvachim, in Parak Chata Sa'af, the Gemara says the same thing. The Gemara asks that Malika itself was listed as one of the most difficult avodas, and that was because he had to do kind of acrobatics to get the bird into his hand, and then he had to do the Malika, and he had to make sure to cut exactly what needed to be cut and what didn't need to be cut. Because again, depending on what type of bird he was shechting, was whether he cuts both simanim, does he cut the basa, the mafrekes, exactly what he did in terms of the Malika was very complicated. He didn't just stick his finger in, you have to make sure that he cut exactly what needed to be cut. Was he mavdil? Was he not mavdil? So all those things really made a big difference, and therefore it was very intricate and complicated. And that already got its name as being difficult. And Chafina was with the Ketaras, how he would use his hands to scoop it up, and then he had to use the tips of his fingers and his thumb to get everything inside the spoon. So basically he found himself doing acrobatics with the Ketaras and with Malika. Those all seem pretty difficult. So why are we characterizing the Malika as the most difficult? Ela zuhi achas me'avodas kashrus mikdash. It seems like the Gemara gets tripped up with this every single time, because you see the Gemara asks the same question in all three places. What the Gemara meant to say was, this is one of the most difficult avodas in the Beis Hamikdash, because again, he needed to have extraordinary strength to be able to smooth out the mincha that it shouldn't have. Again, if it has just a little bit too much, just a little bit too little, the koma is going to be disqualified. So therefore, it was difficult to make sure that he got an exact measurement. Amar Papa Pshitali, Malo Kumtso Kedekamti Inchi. I understand that when it says Malo Kumtso Kedekamti Inchi, it means the normal process of doing a kmitza. So, Bayar Papa, here comes my question. Kamatz Barashe Etzbaos of Mai. So again, earlier when we used the term Barashe Etzbaos, what that meant was he was literally taking a pinch with the tips of his fingers. Here it means something else. If you look at Rashi, Barashe Etzbaos, he writes, Shehichnis Rasha, it's 4 lines into the wide lines. The Dibur Masels Barashe Etzbaos, Shehichnis Rashe Etzbaos Bekemach. He sticks his hand into the kemach, face down. Upas yado klape kemach v'kometz malo kumsuad pas yado kitikune mahu. So basically, he used like kind of like a shovel motion, and he put his hand downwards. His palm faces the flour, and then he scoops it up with his fingers. So in other words, the way he's supposed to do it is in a sideways motion. He puts his hand in sideways and grabs it with his fingers. But here he did it the other way. He went down, kind of like a shovel, like imagine like a tractor going in, digging his fingers in, and then he picked up the comets that way. What would be the halacha? Minat stadim, mai. What would be the halacha if he did minat stadim? So Rashi has 2 explanations of what minat stadim means. Either he just lowers his hand down into the mincha, and he wedges it in, and he allows the flour to kind of tower over his hand, and then he just closes his hand and picks it up. So it comes over the sides of his hand. Or it means he didn't go to the center of the mincha, he went to the middle. He went to the side of the keli, and he pulled it out that way. And mimata lamaila mai. So this was, he did it the other way. He stuck his fingers in. He just dug his fingers into the bowl, and then he flipped it up. And he stuck his fingers into the bowl, and he flipped his fingers backwards, and then he picked it up. So in other words, the conventional way, the normal way of doing the mincha would be take your hand, go in a sideways motion, pick out a fistful, and then let all the extra pieces fall out, and that would be a kosher way of doing it. Now we're asking about all different ways where he gets the right measurement of the mincha in his hand, but he did it in an unconventional way, either by going down or allowing the mincha to flow over the side of his hands, or he stuck his hand in upside down. Gemara says, take it. No, we don't have a good answer to this question. We don't have a raya one way or the next. Amar Papa Pshitli Melech Chafanav Kedachafni Inchi. By the Ketaras. Since we mentioned Ketaras, we'll discuss it as well. The way you're supposed to do the chafina of the Ketaras is you stick your hands in and you pick it up together with both hands. So what would be the halacha if Bayra Papa Chafan Barashe Etzbaosav, if you would have done it different? Again, he starts with the tips of his fingers. Mao, minat stadim. Mao, the same thing. It does it from the side. Like we said earlier, 2 different explanations of what stadim means. Mao, what's halacha chafan bezu ubazu v'karva etzozeh. He does one hand, and then does another hand, and then picks them up, and then puts them together. What's the halacha? In other words, he ends up having the right amount of ketoras in his hands, but he didn't do it the conventional way of sticking his hands in and picking it up. Mao, what's the halacha? Take it. We don't have an answer to that. We don't have a raya one way or the other. Vayra Papa, Dav Kele Komas B'Defanov Demana Mai. We know that after the Kohen actually does the komitz, he picks up this handful of the mincha. He has to do kiddush komitz by putting it into a vessel from the Beis Hamikdash. So what happens if he just sticks it on the side of that keli? He doesn't allow it to fall in the natural way into the keli. Mai Tok Kli B'inan V'Ha'ika is the point that it just needs to be inside the walls of this keli. And good, he has it. Odilma hanacha b'socha. You need to put it down properly inside. Velek, he doesn't have that. Teku. Again, we don't have an answer to that. Boy Marbar Avashi. Half Chelamana, Vidav Gelakomos are Isa Tamanamai. We're getting creative over here. Again, he takes this keli, and the keli, imagine it was like had a stem on the bottom. So you have the regular keli, which obviously has what's called a base kibble, has a place to accept it in the normal conventional way of putting it there. But if you were to flip over this keli, there would also be a space on the bottom. It's kind of like the stem that it stands on. So he's asking, what happens if you put the chametz in there? In other words, you flip it over, do it upside down. So now you have the keli. It's definitely in the klishares, but that's not where it belongs. So the question is, if he did that, again, hanacha v'sochel b'inan, do you just simply need that it goes inside a klishares? V'ha'ika, and you've done it. O dilma kitikuna b'inan, you got to do this right. V'leka, and you didn't do it right, take it. So again, we don't have an answer to this because ultimately we can't say that the chametz was not mekudesh, that it wasn't sanctified because it didn't go. We can't say it didn't go into the keli. It went into the keli, maybe the wrong side of the keli, but we don't have a raya one way or the other to say that this would work or this would not work. We're up to the Mishnah on Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph. Keitzadu osa. So what does he do? What does he do with the chametz? Poshet etzba'osav al pas yado. He folds over his fingers onto his palm. Riba shmeina, if he has too much oil. Chaser shmeina, or if he's missing some of the oil. Chitzer levonta, pesula, if it's missing the levona, then it's pasul. So it seems interesting. The Gemara is going to ask why we're missing something. It seems like the Mishnah is missing something. When it comes to oil, it tells you what happens if you have too much or too little. When it comes to levona, to the frankincense, it just talks about if it's missing. What happens if you have too much? The Mishnah doesn't mention anything about that. Gemara asks the question, Hechi dami, Riba Shmeina. What would be the case of Riba Shmeina? Amar Rabbi Lezer Kagon Shehifresh La Shnei Lugin. You separated for this karban mincha double the amount that you're supposed to. You designated two different measurements of oil of a lug. So Gemara asks the simple question: why do you have to go there? Why do you have to say that he went and designated double the amount of oil that he's supposed to be than what he's supposed to be designating? Why don't we just say, "Look, why don't we establish the case to be kagon the arav b'shem dechulin b'shem dechaverta?" Why don't we just say either he took some oil from another karban mincha, or he just added in some oil from chulin, which wasn't part of the karban mincha? Why do you have to say that the guy went so far as to designate a whole second jug of oil for this karban mincha? And don't try to tell me that wouldn't have ruined it, because it certainly would have. And I'll show you why. I'll prove it to you. Because Mask Flor of Zutra Bar Tuvia Elomiata Minchas Chote de Pasal Bashemen Heichem Mishkachas. So Minchas Chote doesn't get any oil in it. So the question is going to be, if it does not get any oil in it, how would it become pasal by adding in oil? Which oil would ruin it? Heichidami. Idida, if you're adding in oil of its own, well, we just got finished saying halesla. It's not part of the ingredients. A minchas chote, mincha, which comes as a sin offering, does not come with any oil. Idechulin udechaverta. If you're going to tell me it's talking about it was oil which came from another karban mincha or from regular chulin, hold on a second. You just got finished trying to tell me that it doesn't ruin it. Ha'amrit lo pasal. So in other words, you're stuck. Either you're going to tell me that he added in from its own oil, but a karban minchas chote doesn't have any oil. So it must be that the only case that can ruin a minchas chote by adding in oil, that only possible case is by adding in either oil from another mincha or oil which is chulin. But obviously it has to be one of those two cases, otherwise there never would be a case of a minchas chote that gets disqualified by adding in oil, and we know that it does. So the Gemara says, you have to relax a little bit. He didn't mean to specifically say that case. Rabbi Lezer lomi bai ka'amar. Lezer was saying a case which is a lomi bai, which is a principle that when you say something, some things are just obvious, they come along with it. Now, it's not necessary to mention those facts. What he meant to say was as follows: Lo mi boy, I don't even need to bother telling you the chulin u'dechaver to apostle. If you add in oil from chulin or from another carbon, it would be disqualified. I will hifresh lo shnei lugin, but you would have thought that if you would designate 2 jugs of oil for 1 carbon mincha, hoyel v'hai chazile, so I would say, since either one theoretically can be used, neither of these really would ruin it. Kamash Malan, the fact that you designated too much oil does indeed disqualify this mincha. Uminali Blazer ha. So now that sounds like actually a very big chiddush. The fact that a guy designated an extra jug of oil ruins the mincha, and the truth is, it's really logical. It should be good. Just choose one. So where does he know that from? Marava masnisim kashyasi. You figured out from the Mishnah. Because my area detani riba shmeina. Why did he use the words riba shmeina? He added in more oil. Listening riba la shemen. The proper grammar would have been he added into it more oil. El hakamashma, and the fact that the Mishnah used an interesting terminology, it was because the afagav the hifresh la shnei lugin, even if he designated for this carbon mincha 2 separate lugin, nevertheless, and it would theoretically each one would be good, still the halach is that it's possible. The Gemara continues. Chisir levanta, if you're missing some of the frankincense. Tana Rabbanan, chasera va'amda al karet echad psula. If the levana is missing, and the only thing that's left is 1 drop of levana, psula. Al shnei kratim, but if it has 2 drops of levana left, kishera. In other words, a very minute difference. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Omer al karet echad kishera. You have to have just literally a mashahu of levona that's left, and it's still kosher. Turn to Yud Aleph Amud Beis V'Atanya. So we have. It's just important to focus on this machlokas. We have a machlokas over here between Rabbi Yehuda, who says you have to have at least 2 drops of levona left, and Rabbi Shimon, who says it's kosher even if it has 1 mashahu of levona left.
So talking about where they mix them together and then didn't have enough, or they were mixed?
No, they got lost before it. Gemara Sakasha Vatanya. It says in the Brayso, "Kometz u'levona shechaser kol shehu." A kometz and a levona that's missing anything, puzzle. It's puzzle. So there we have. This is a problem. So again, if you look at the Shita Mekubetzes, he takes out the word Rabbi Shimon Omer, which is in the parentheses. But really, we have to understand that this Rashi explains to us that this was Rabbi Shimon. This nevertheless was Rabbi Shimon's opinion. Happens to be the words weren't in the Brayso, so therefore it's not accurate to write Rabbi Shimon Omer. But the Brayso was referring to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. That's why it's Takasha. Batanya, it says in Brayso, "Kometz levona shechaser kol shehu," puzzle. The kometz or levona that's missing even a drop is puzzle. So how could Rabbi Shimon tell me that even if there's just a little bit left, it's going to be kosher? We have a Brayso which seems to it says very straightforward, that if it's even missing a drop, the whole thing's going to be puzzle. Gemara says, Tani korot levona shechaser kol shehu. You have to understand what that meant to say was, if you have this final drop of levona, which ultimately ends up losing a drop from it, that's when it's going to be puzzle. In other words, if you have a korot, which is literally like a teardrop worth of levona, and that's missing, then it's going to be puzzle. V'bai sema, we offer another explanation. Kan b'levona ba ima mincha, kan b'levona ba b'fnei atzma. There are 2 different types of levona. A person could bring a levona on its own as a levona offering. So if it's a levona which is accompanying a mincha, so in such a case, you're right. It would be enough if it just a mashahu was left. However, if you're bringing an offering of a levona, and then it's missing, so you're going to walk to the mizbeach with your tiny pinch of levona, that's not enough. There are 3 opinions on this matter. Rabbi Meir savar kometz b'tchila, kometz b'sof. he has the most stringent of opinions. You've got to have a full kometz at the beginning and a full kometz all the way at the end. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Yehuda says, kometz betchila, you have to have, you're right, a kometz of levona at the beginning of the process of your karban mincha. However, v'shnei kratim b'sof. At the end, when you makriv it, all you have to have is 2 little bits of levona. Rabbi Shimon Savar kometz betchila, you're right, you have to have a kometz at the beginning. However, at the end, v'karat echad b'sof, you could have just 1 karat left at the end. V'shlashtan, these 3 opinions, mikra echad darshu, were derived from 1 pasuk. What's the pasuk? It says, V'eskol halavona asher ala mincha. The pasuk writes, I believe this is in Parshas Tzav, it says, V'eskol halavona asher ala mincha, which gets brought to the altar. Rameir Savar, ad isa lavona de ikva b'hadi mincha. You have to have the whole lavona, the full thing. Sorry, ad isa lavona de ikva b'hadi mincha meikara. The same lavona that you had at the beginning, you have to have at the end. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, kol, the extra word, yes, kol halavona, obviously comes to include something. It's coming to include any part of the lavona which is still here is enough. Rafilu chad karet. Yehuda Savar, kol vafilu chad karet. The word kol adds in even if there's only 1 drop left. Es, the word v'es, kol halavona. Those 2 extra words, v'es and kol, which seemingly don't need to be written in the pasuk. Those are adding in, you have to have plus 2 extra pieces of the lavona. Shimon es lo darash. Shimon does not darshan the word es. He believes the word es is not extra. He doesn't darshan es anywhere. So therefore the only extra word is kol, and kol just adds in that you have to have 1 bit of the lavona at the end. This machlokes that we're having over here is referring to a lavona, the frankincense haba im mincha, which accompanies the mincha. Lavona which comes by itself as its own offering. Everyone will agree that you have to have a full kometz of lavona at the beginning and a full kometz of lavona at the end. The pasuk continues, V'eskol halavona asher ala mincha. Only if it's accompanying a mincha, that's when we'll have these drashas, which can tell us you don't have to have the entire kometz at the time of that krava. To bahadi mincha in, if it's coming together with a mincha, then we have this pasuk. If it comes by itself, it has to indeed have the full measurement. Amar Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, machlokes b'lavona haba im mincha. So we're taking this a little further because there is also kmitza which comes along with the bezichin. Bezichin were these little spoons that sat on the shulchan. They also had levona in it, and they would also be offered up on the mizbeach. So he's saying the same thing, that this drasha that they're all making to say that by a karban mincha a levona could be missing, could be down to either 1 drop or 2 drops, depending on which opinion we're going with. That again, that is a halacha which is reserved specifically to the halachas of karban mincha, to a levana which comes along with a karban mincha. However, the levana which comes along with the bezichin, which is the bezichin, you would have to have the full measurement of 2 kmitzas, which because there are 2 spoons there, you would have to have 2 kmitzas in the beginning and 2 kmitzas at the end. Gemara says pshita. That seems to be pretty simple, and that's what you're supposed to bring. And first of all, that's what the offering is. And number 2, you just got finished telling me that this halach is reserved specifically to a karban mincha. So why tell it to me again? Gemara says, Ma'od Tema, I would have thought to say, Kivin de Bahadi Lechem, Isa, since it's coming along with the Lechem Hapanim, the showbread. So Isa Ka'asher ala mincha damya. Since it's coming along with the bread, it's similar to coming along with the mincha. In other words, I would say it has the same characteristic as a mincha. Just like the levona is not coming on its own, it's coming to accompany something else. It would be just like a mincha. Just like a mincha, the levona comes to accompany the mincha. You don't have to have the full measurement at the end. You could have just a little bit at the end. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it has to be two kratim. According to Rabbi Shimon, it could be even one. But I would say the same thing is true by lechem apanim. Since these bezichin come to accompany the lechem apanim, then I would say it's fine if it just has a drop of levona left. Kamash malan. The Gemara is teaching me that no, that halacha is really specifically reserved only to the case of a mincha. However, by a case of lechem apanim, the bezichin would have to be full. These spoons would have to be full with the kmitza of levona that's in them. Pligi bar of Ami for Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. There's a dispute amongst Rav Ami and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Chad Amar Machlokas beLevona Habaim Mincha, Aval beLevona Habaim Above Fniyat Divya Kol Komas B'Tchil Komas B'Sof. Chad Amar Machlokas B'Zu, Kach Machlokas B'Zu. So in other words, the Machlokas that we just had is again subject to another dispute between Rav Ami and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. We're up to the two dots, about 2/3 of the way down on Yud Aleph Amud Beis. We are paraphrasing what it says in the Mishnah: Chiser levonta, if you are missing part of the levona. Halach is pesula, the mincha is going to be pasal. So the Gemara asked the question which we prefaced earlier. The Mishnah did not say anything about if you have more than you're supposed to. When it came to shemen, to oil, Mishnah was very clear that if you have double the amount, which is the way we established in the Gemara, or if you add in oil from another mincha, or if you add an oil from chulin, it's going to be pasal. We don't say anything about the levona, but having more levona than you're supposed to. Hayaser, keshera. Mishnah the Gemara makes a diuk that if you have more, it would seem to imply that it would be kosher. Vatanya, the Gemara sakasha, yaser pesula. If you have more, it says in the Brayso that if you have more, then it's pasal. Amar Rami Bar Chama Kagon Shehifer Shlosh Shnei Kamatzim. That's talking about where he has 2 kamatzim, double the amount. In such a case, it would be pasal. V'amar Rami Bar Chama Hifer Shlosh Shnei Kamatzim v'avad echad mehem. If indeed you designate 2 kamatzim of levona, you'll have double the amount of levona that you're supposed to. So now it depends. And then you lost one. So now you separate 2 kmitza worths of levona, and then one gets lost. So the question is, are you back in the game? You shouldn't have designated 2 kmitzas of levona for your karban mincha, but you did. But now one got lost, so maybe you'll be back in the game. So so Rami Bar Chama says it depends. If it's kodem kmitza, so lo hukvu. If it got lost before you actually pulled out the kmitza, then you're still good, because it never was established yet as a mincha. Achar kmitza, if it was after he actually did the kmitza, then hukvu, it was already established as a mincha which has double the amount of the kometz than you're supposed to, then it's a problem. Rami Bar Chama continues and says, Hifish arba kamatzim l'shnei bezichim. He designated 4 kamatzim for 2 bezichim. So there's 2 bezichim, you're supposed to have 2 kamatzim. So he did 4. But now, thankfully, v'avdu shnayim mehem, he lost 2 of them. So again, kodem siluk bezichim lo hukvu. Before you take away the bezichim, lo hukvu, and it's fine. Lachar siluk bezichim, after the siluk bezichim, which happens after the karban musaf on Shabbos, hukvu, it gets designated as being a double kometz or double bezichin, and you have a problem. Gemara says, why say this to me twice? We get it. Tell me this. Tell me the halacha by a mincha, and I'll know that it all depends upon at what point in time you'll have the double kmitza. If it's double at the time that it's designated as a karban, which would be by a mincha after the kmitza, and by the bezichin after you take it off the shulchan, so then it will be a problem. Why do I have to hear the details of every single case? Just tell me that as long as I only have 2 at a time, that I actually designate each karban to its own, or each offering, each one to its own details, then I'll figure it out. The Gemara says, in other words, it's the same thing, you just told me that. I would have said, Kivan, I would say that since by the levona it's all designated into one spoon and its size is predetermined already, I would say it doesn't actually need me to take it off the shulchan for it to be designated as the bazichin which will be offered on the mizbeach. So kamash malan that yes, you do indeed need to take it off the shulchan for it to be established as the bazichin, and that would be the determining time for when you have too much levona for your bazichin. You're going to stop here. It's a very long Mishnah, which we'll start with tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Made it.